Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of The Spotlight. I am your host, Kente, all the way live from Los Angeles, California. And I'm here with my co-host, the one and only Olaf Barbosa. How are you doing, Olaf?
I am doing great. It's like been a really good day here in the great state of Indiana. So just don't get much better than this today.
All right. I'm glad that you are doing well because I know you've had some health challenges, but man, you keep it licking and keep on ticking, man.
Yeah, that's like that's what I just I'm not. They're not ready for me yet, so I ain't going nowhere.
You're gonna be with us, whether we want it or not.
It's like whether you want it or not, I will be here.
All right, that's what's up. All right. Also with us is the one and only King Penvin himself. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Here in the very hot and warm Ontario, Canada. We're just getting out of a heat wave, and we're going into Labor Day with some nice sunny weather, which is not too hot.
All right. Well, I'm glad that you were here as well. And our guest for tonight is the filmmaker, actor himself, Jimmy Lee Combs. How you doing, man?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yes, I'm glad that you're here to talk with us. Now, for those who are tuning in because they want to hear our list of the top 10 movies of the 70s, that will be after our interview with our guest, Jimmy Combs. We all have a list and we're ready to share it with everybody. So that'll be a little bit later in the show. But first, let's start off with our guests. And as we do in our tradition of our show, we always like to start off with where are you from originally, Jimmy?
I'm from Denver, Colorado, and then moved to Westminster, Colorado, where I've been pretty much my entire life. So always been central to Colorado.
All right. So, I've been through Colorado. I haven't had the opportunity to really spend some time there. What was it like growing up there?
The winters were fun, of course. There was a lot of sledding. We have a hill across the street from where I grew up, so we would always go sledding. Wasn't until I got older that I really started to appreciate the mountains and going up there and enjoying, parts of town like Estes Park and the cool Stanley Hotel we got here. I love it because you have all the different seasons here. You got pretty nice summers, really nice summers, and then you got really cold winters, blizzards sometimes. So you get a mix of everything here. I've really enjoyed it here. It's really cool. The people here are really great, and the film scene here is really awesome too.
Now, being from Los Angeles, I don't even know what it's. We only know one season,
right?
Nothing else. So I can't even relate to you about knowing what the seasons are like. So, but I know now one thing that I've heard a lot about Denver that there's more opportunities that are coming as far as film, as in the last several years. Is that what you've noticed?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when, our incentive program is in place here. It's kind of been up and down over the years. But we had a film that just came out on DVD a couple weeks ago called Dear Eleanor. And I believe it had like Jessica Alba in it and some bigger names in it and a lot of local talent. And some of my friends got in on that, which was really cool. Of course, The Hateful Eight. Shooting up in Telluride, that was really sweet. Having Tarantino come here to shoot some of the film, So and it's a really beautiful state to film in. So I really hope more work comes here.
Mm-hmm. Now, at what point did you realize that you had the bug that you wanted to be involved in this business?
Absolutely. I would say is probably in my late teenage years. I could look back on it and say, as a kid, where a lot of it started, because I always loved telling stories, and I especially enjoyed horror and horror films. And, so I would always tell these like horror stories in school and have drawings to go with them, and it'd be like somebody with a knife or something. So I think that's where the storytelling flair started from. And then, like I said, in my late teenage years, I started thinking, oh, wow, okay, so, how do movies start? Where do they come from? And then, it starts with somebody writing a script, director, producer. And then I really wanted to get into acting too. So I would say I started with acting and screenwriting. That's kind of probably for another question, but in my late teens, I really got fascinated with the filmmaking side of things. And I've always been a huge movie buff. loved movies ever since I was little. And yeah, I finally got old enough to like, okay, I want to dive into this.
You know what's so funny is, I write as well, and I remember like I when I was very, very young, I was like maybe 11, 12 or something like that. I would write stories on one of them old ass computers. And I remember like years later, like when I was an adult, I found the computer like at my parents' house, and that I used to write stories on, right? So I found like some old scripts that I wrote, like I'm talking about like at 12 years old, right? And I could recall them being like amazing,
right?
And then I remember when I read them as now as an adult, I'm like, man, I was retarded.
It is funny to look back because my mom, of course, she saved a lot of this stuff. So like I like to go back now and collect those and what she saved and read them. And it was like, I was like, the times were different then, so you can get away with things a little bit more than nowadays. But I was like, whoa, how did I submit this story in class and not get sent home or teacher conferences? But I remember one of them was inspired from a Tales from the Crypt episode. And I called it Meat Cleaver People, where basically it's this restaurant and the cooks are cooking people and serving them to their customers. Cut them up. And yeah, and I love Tales from the Crypt and other horror stuff, but it was kind of inspired from one of those episodes. I think it was one of the episodes that had Stephen King in it. I can't remember who it was, but I think Stephen King was in that episode. I could be wrong, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I feel you, man. With going back and reading the stories. Yeah. One thing I noticed too is that I was definitely stealing stuff that I'd seen before. So I was a young little plagiarist. So it sounds like it stayed with you. If you're still writing to this day.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I think hopefully I kicked some of those bad habits I had when I was 12. So.
Right.
So being in Colorado, most people believe that you have to be in either Los Angeles or New York to make it in the industry. Now you got like Atlanta on the rise, of course, Canada, like Toronto and Vancouver and Calgary too are places that are on the rise as far as filmmaking. So being a guy in Colorado, was there ever any pressure, or did you put any pressure on yourself to eventually get to either coast or one of those places, or what?
That's a great question, man. Yeah, I would love to get out to LA. California is like a second home to me, so I'm familiar with some of the areas out there, and I love it. New Mexico, I've never been out there. That's a big scene as well. So yeah, I'd love to get out to those film communities. What I think is really beneficial for a filmmaker in Colorado anyway, is you can really start building up your body of work and show, if you're going to go out to LA and have nothing and start from the ground up, I feel you're going to have a little bit harder time with all the competition and stuff. But if you're making a film here, or if you make a feature film here, and at the very least can say it's got distribution, it's on, Amazon and video on demand and on DVD, you start to build your body of work, and you can, show that in the LA market or the New Mexico markets. And I think that'll start to give you a one-up, which is nice. So keep building your body of work, and then if you start getting into like, proof of concept trailers and things like that, you can film so much here and do so much here in Colorado and still get it in front of, the LA market and LA eyes, or, and then, as far as actors go, a lot of the paid film gigs and stuff are going to be like in LA and New Mexico and Georgia and those. But again, there's a really good film scene here where actors can submit for projects, get in them, start building up their reel, going out there and definitely finding the work themselves. In addition to being repped with an agent. Yeah, absolutely. Again, I haven't worked in the LA film market to say how hard it actually is, but from what I've heard, it might be a lot harder for somebody just up and going out there. But on that note, so we could still go out there and make a film and it catch on. And so yeah, that's my thoughts on it. If you're going to be within a state that's not LA or New Mexico or one of the big film scenes.
You know what? You know, I constantly love to say this. Like, we live in such a golden age of independence in just putting out content. Because when I got out of high school, 95, and like, pretty much you had to go to film school, right, really have a legit chance of doing anything. You had to shoot on film. Which is expensive,
right?
You had to actually know what you're doing, And like now, I mean, you can be a complete idiot and actually luck up and make something decent, right? And which is, maybe that's bad, maybe it's good, I don't know. And then you can distribute as well using the internet as well and get your work out there.
Yes.
For people to see. It's a great time right now. I believe cream rises to the top. I like to believe that. So.
Well, no, I agree, man, and that's the thing with that. A lot of people feel like, oh yeah, anybody can be a filmmaker now. Anybody can get a digital SLR camera and make a movie, and you can, and they feel it's flooding the market, and there is a lot of stuff getting put out there, and you got to weed through the noise. But I still feel at the end of the day, whether you're shooting on a red camera, on a digital SLR, it goes back to some of the basics. Can you tell a good story? Are you having characters your audience cares about? Things like that. I mean, it could be two people in a room, Jim Jarmusch style, talking throughout the whole film. But if it's engaging, you like the characters, you're telling the story. You can have it on a lower end SLR camera. Light it, that kind of stuff, and I think. You get recognized for that, where, obviously there's some movies that are, painfully bad. And I was just talking about this today, that it's hard to sit through some of the stuff. But, as a filmmaker, you constantly want to grow and learn from your mistakes and get better and better. But, I saw a short that was shot on a red camera, and they put a lot of money into it. It was really bad, So it just goes to show, just because you're shooting on a red camera, and it, doesn't mean it's going to be an engaging film.
I've been to film.
I my 2 cents on it. Yeah,
I've been to film festivals where you'll see the movie, you could tell it was shot like on a red camera or something. And it's completely terrible. But then there'll be some film that they made on an iPhone 6.
Right.
It's amazing, right? So it doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters to a certain degree, but it's all about the creativity of the user, right? So
I agree, man. And people, and more emphasis on the audio side. Like you said, you shoot it on an iPhone 6, and it may have decent audio or recorders or things you can get in there. But once you're being very mindful of that audio too. They say an audience is going to be a little more forgiving of the look of the film than they are of bad audio. And that's how the red thing was too. So you spend all this money and you rent this red, or you shoot it on red, and the audio is muffled and the airplane's going by. And, so there's other things, you can do to worry about more so. But that's not bashing a red, because there's incredible stuff when done right. Story, sound, everything when done on a red is just amazing. And of course, with how fast technology changes, 2K, 4K, 16K, who knows when that's going to be the upgrade in the standard. I usually always hang kind of I don't want to say decade's not the right word, but like behind or the current technology. So I shoot on a Canon 5D Mark II. And I love it, and I get amazing results. But, obviously it's not like, 4K or anything like that. But the day will probably come, and I'm going to have to jump into that 4K realm.
Yeah, I'm looking at that myself. Also, too, like, there's a lot of resources for information that's out there. Like, I always joke that you can find a YouTube video on how to do almost anything. Like, if I wanted to do a brain surgery, there's probably a YouTube video for it as well. That
don't follow that one. It's like, don't follow the brain surgery one. It doesn't work all that well. It's like it gets right to the crucial point where you're cutting through, and it has to go to part 2. So you have to try to find part 2. It's not a good thing.
Well, I'll download both videos
there you
before.
Go.
Nice.
So, but the information is out there, and then there's these communities that are out there to help us filmmakers, right? There's online communities, and there's communities that are, in specific areas of the country. And I wonder, what's the filmmaking, and we're going to get to your projects, but what's the filmmaking community like in Colorado? Do you find that there's people there that's, trying to help each other? Is it like that kind of community? What is it like?
Yes, it very much is. I really love the film scene here. Everybody, is really supportive and has each other's back. The film scene is a small world, and especially here, you'll be at an audition, especially me as, like a filmmaker, I'll be at an audition as an actor, and I'll run into so many people that I've either worked with or have networked with or have seen at film gatherings. And, so it's really cool people you run into. Sometimes you see them all the time. Sometimes you haven't seen them in a while. And then you'll start, you'll cast somebody, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, do you know so-and-so? I'm like, yeah, they're going to be in this, this film as well. Yeah, so it's very supportive. There's one great gathering here that I really enjoy. It's at the Bug Theater, and it's called the Emerging Filmmakers Project, and it's done the third Thursday of every month. And basically, it's an invite to everybody in the film scene to come, gather, network, free beer, which is awesome, and then we screen. They screen local films of what people are doing here in the film scene in Colorado, short films, and that's where I started getting put on the map here in Colorado and starting to show my work through this venue and networking and meeting people. And I have Patrick Sheridan to thank for that. He's the gentleman that is hosting EFP, and really great guy. So yeah, it's very supportive. It's very collaborative film scene here.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know. Hey, hello, Pam, in the chat room. Now let's talk about the genre of horror. As a child, that was like my favorite, right? Because like I said, I went to high school in the 90s, and the movies like Halloween, Friday 13th.
Oh, absolutely, the classic.
All of those movies were like really popping at the time. I remember every year going to the theater watching one of those films. And then of course we have the classics as well, going back to Alfred Hitchcock and such. I want to know, what is your perfect type of kind of horror film? Do you like the over the top, dumping the blood into the camera, or do you like the more psychological, type horror, or what kind of horror do you like?
It's funny, man. It's kind of ironic in a sense. Like I enjoy, all kinds of different types of horror, since it's kind of my specialty in my area that I really love. But I really enjoy like the slashers and the gore and those kind of films. I really dig the Friday the 13th, Jason, even like, the trauma films, Toxic Avenger, the cult films like that. I enjoy like the kind of the more of the slow burns and building on the audio and the suspense, like, in The Conjuring and Insidious. So there's some really good modern ones, and kind of horror, but more thriller suspense. I just saw Don't Breathe, which was incredible. But anyway, like when I write horror, I tend to be fair. I usually am more grounded in reality. Like when I write horror, and you'll see that in some of my work, that it's either like, whoa, this could really happen in real life, or this dude could, some husband could really hold his wife captive and torture her. And not necessarily, like the head's getting cut off and flying and rolling everywhere and the guts and intestines spewing out. I love that stuff, and I've done that kind of stuff. But I just find it kind of ironic that the kind of stuff that I enjoy, like Saw and stuff, and with gore, I tend to kind of write the opposite and have more of it grounded in reality that people can relate to. And I think sometimes that's the big horror in life. But I mean, obviously, you get a lot of the horror tropes and elements in my stuff too. But yeah, it's a little more grounded in reality.
I was just talking about this. Like, the scariest scene to me, like I can watch anything, right?
Right.
But there's this one scene in this movie that I can't. It's hard for me to watch, and it's Misery, the sledgehammer scene. That every time I always gotta. That's the only scene ever that I have to turn my head on.
It is cringing, man.
My foot hurts watching that.
Well,
that makes
funny.
me
I don't want
cringe.
to spoil too much, but if you get around to seeing Terror Tales when it's finished, there's a scene in the segment we just shot for Terror Tales. With the killer, his name is the Sledgehammer, and that's his MO, played by Jonathan Tiersten. And anyways, there's a scene in there that is inspired by Misery, but I don't want to spoil it. You have to see. It's interesting to see if it affects you the same way. Yeah.
Oh wow!
Think of that.
You went right to the one that gets me.
Good.
So I can watch anything. People getting their heads cut, but it's something about that foot.
It's funny, and that's the thing with horror, and it's so amazing how it affects different people when they watch it. You know, some people, they can't stomach the gore. You know, what gets me personally is, you know, again, kind of the reality stuff. You know, stuff like The Exorcist. You know, or people possessed, and even like The Shining. I was just thinking about this the other day. Shit, that really messed me up as a kid that I saw, and the twins. The Grady twins in the Shining, freaked the hell out of me. And my brothers would kind of, you know, force me to, you know, watch the twins when they would come up and because they knew it would always scare the hell out of me. But you know, it wasn't like the bloody. Well, you know, the twin girls were in there with like the bloody elevator and stuff, and they showed that. But yeah, it wasn't like necessarily the gore and things like that. It was things like that, or like the naked old lady that comes out of the bathtub in The Shining.
Scary,
Really,
very scary.
Things like that really get in your subconscious and kind of psychologically messes with you. And that's what's so fun about horror is how it affects different people.
You know, maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like the movies back in the day, like they're so iconic, like you remember them even to this day. But it don't seem like movies now, like they're good for that moment. Like I don't know if there's too many movies that are being made now where you could say like 20 years from now. I mean, with a few exceptions, of course. You know, especially in the horror genre, where you're like, you know what, 20 years from now, they're still going to be talking about this movie. I mean, I can't think of it.
And it's really tough, man. It's really tough. And I think that's what's tough with horror now. It's got a huge fan base. It's got a huge dedicated audience, which is great to tap into and be able to make films for. But, you know, since everything's pretty much been done and everybody's seen everything, and like with the internet age, you know, there's like so much more shocking things out there, you know, compared to like the 80s or 70s or like Dario Argento stuff, or, you know, films like then that were really shocking because they were new, or you didn't have the internet to see more shocking shit in, you know, in real life. And yeah, so it can be tough, you know, and then there'll be films like The Conjuring, like we mentioned, or Insidious, or like the Babadook. You know, everybody talked a lot about the Babadook, but I already see that one kind of trailing off a little bit, where, you know, like in 20 years, am I going to look back? Babadook was the masterpiece. I loved it in the moment. You know, it's like, I don't know. It's hard to tell, but you're right. You know, a lot of films kind of tread off, and I think, you know, a lot of foreign films those are always really cool, and, you know, some of those catch on in the States. But if more of those were either made here or shown here, you know, those kind of films are I could certainly see how that impact.
Let's see, we have in the chat room, I wonder if some filmmakers are starting to rely too heavily on CG and not really develop a good psychological thriller. That's a good question.
That's a very good question. Do you want me to answer that, or you? Or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, you know, when I see a lot of films or like horror films, you know, I'll think that some of them do rely on CG a little too much, because in my head, coming from old school horror and loving practical effects and growing up with them, and my partner in crime, Kevin Ward, he was on the show Face Off, and he does special effects, so I work with him a lot with this stuff. But, you know, I see stuff and I'm like, wow, that could have totally been done practical. Right. So that's our philosophy when we make horror films is do everything we can practical, and then, you know, marry it with CG. I'll give you an example, a slight little spoiler, but, you know, in Terror Tales, there's a shot with this little boy. He reaches into his head. It's during a nightmare scene. He reaches into his head and he pulls out a bullet. And so where, to give you an example, we did, you know, like a practical effect right here on him, and then we did like a green screen head with the wound, a practical wound, and then we took the little boy's hand, and he's reaching into the green screened head with the practical wound on it, and inside this green screen dummy head is bits of like chopped up bananas and guts and bits to kind of resemble brain matter. And so in post, you can composite the practical image of the boy and the green screen dummy head with the wound on it with his hand going into it, composite it onto it. So it looks pretty seamlessly that he's actually putting his head or his hand into his head and pulling something out of it. So something like that is really cool when you can marry the two, rather than doing the whole thing CG and pulling out CG blood. And CG blood is one of the most obvious things. And, you know, we did that with the first feature film where we went a little CG blood heavy in some scenes, but it was comedic. So it kind of worked, but you can tell. You can definitely tell.
I'd say there's also a problem with audience expectations for horror films nowadays. Everybody wants a jump scare, which is the worst. It's not horror. That's the worst. And that seems to be what Hollywood films are putting out all the time. We're going to have a jump scare. And that's not what horror is. Like, horror is supposed to be the tension and the ill feeling, the unease that you have.
Exactly.
And
I agree.
All a jump scare is here's your musical note coming, something's going to happen, and there it is. And you go, okay, I'm relieved. Let's go on to the next scene. And there's no real build-up of that unease that you get. The Shining had the unease. There was no real big jump scares in that. That was just a slow building of Jack Nicholson slowly going crazy and how it affects everything. And by the end of it, you're feeling kind of uneasy. And, you know, I'm not going to. I can't say this one. I'll give away part of my list. So there is a certain 70s horror film that was all about making you feel uneasy through the whole thing, from probably beginning to end. You just had this feeling of just unease through the whole thing, and that's what I think true horror is. Is getting sort of a psychological effect on the viewer itself.
I agree, and that's actually a good point. You know, going back to what you can remember 20 years down the road, and I think it's going to be those films that try and get past the jump scares and kind of go for the tension and the build up and doing much more with the characters rather than them just being kill bait or something. And something like the Babadook, like I mentioned before, does that where it builds up and there's some tension and it's really cool, and hopefully it is that one of those ones remembered. But that's for me personally, what makes horror films nowadays stand out is films like The Babadook. They're doing it different, rather than just as an example, not picking on them, but like possession films. I mean, there's so many. You've seen so many, and then it's like, okay, I've seen that before. Then they're not as memorable, and especially when there's a lot of them. So
they have the same flavor.
Yeah, exactly.
The first one that came out, and everything has been basically a rip on that ever since.
Exactly. And it's the same, like, it's like the zombie genre. I dig it. I did a zombie film, but, Romero obviously made it really popular, and everybody's, been doing it since, and it's bigger now than probably ever. But, sometimes there's only so many zombie films you can sit through, or ones that are really good, like Shaun of the Dead and those. But
there's one horror film that's probably a little over 20 years ago. It has all the attention and everything. It's just so it scares me to. It's like I don't think I could ever watch it again. Wow. It's just so terrifying. It's like in the video. It was my it's like my wedding video, so that was kind of scary.
I knew it. I was gonna say,
a lot of tension there,
right? A lot of tension and all that stuff there.
Oh,
scary stuff.
I'll say there's one, the old Tales from the Crypt TV series. There was one episode that got me, and it wasn't the goriest one or anything like that. It was the one, who was in it now? I think it was Bridges. The one brother makes the other one thinks he's dead, and they're saying, when you die, you still feel things, and he's trying to prove it, and it's just a practical joke.
Nice.
That one freaked me out, and it was just the concept of the whole thing of you're dead, but you can see and hear things. You're in the morgue. They're going to do these things to you, and there's nothing you can do. And not see anything. It's just the whole implication and that whole creepy vibe of you're dead, but you're not. You haven't left your body or anything. You're still there, And the last line of the thing is, you were wrong. The last thing that goes is not your the sensations, and you hear the drill going as someone's doing the thing. And so it's like,
that is really cool. Yeah,
But I mean, there was no gore.
The psyche, and
exactly.
And you as an audience member, you kind of start putting yourself there, and you're like, wow, I was having this experience.
So and the fact you could keep thinking about it days later, weeks later, months later, or something just pops in your head and gives you that same kind of
exactly, man.
That's a good horror film, or horror. At least that's good horror.
Mm-hmm.
When you sit down to write something, especially when you're dealing with horror, because it's the dark side of life, right? Do you have to get into a certain kind of headspace? Do you, are you one of those people that gets immersed in your writing to where you're like, do you have to be locked into a cabin somewhere in the in the woods or something? Like
exactly. Exactly, and that's a good question. So kind of my process, for writing is I definitely need to be alone. I have my space like down here, and I'm a night owl, and it works really well where I can write at night and have my kind of my alone time. Kiddos are in bed, wife's at work, kind of thing, and so that's where a lot of the writing goes down, and I really immerse myself into that process. One thing that I'll do is music. Music is huge for me when I'm writing a script, whether it's a certain character and the situation they're in that I'm writing, or a situation that I want to put them in. I think of some kind of music to kind of get me there, and it helps bring up the emotions or tap into the emotions more. And that's how I'll immerse myself. And then with any project I do, I'll go on a binge of watching movies in that genre, in that same style, so I can kind of see what's been done, what can I try and offer new to this genre of film, and that'll be part of the process too, even in the writing phases. But yeah, I'd like, and again, depending what I'm writing too, I can kind of go to personal experiences or personal feelings, especially if it's like a dark kind of romance thing, I can tap into some kind of feelings there and put them into the characters. So I think it's a combination of that. But yeah, I like torturing myself when I'm writing. Yeah.
Do you ever work in like family members or an evil boss that you used to have him get his head hacked off or something like that?
There's been things like that, throughout the films where it'll either, represent somebody that, was kind of a dick, or, or it did something kind of personal to me that was, and then put him into the film in some kind of way where it's kind of therapeutic in a sense. But it has happened.
Now, I don't know if this has happened to you, and maybe same thing with you, King. Have you ever written something that wasn't about somebody, but then someone goes, "That character was about me," and you're like, "No, that wasn't." They like, "No, you're vain. It's not about you."
Exactly, and it's funny because it does kind of put you in an awkward position because you're like, I swear this wasn't about you. I mean, then you start thinking it's like you may have some issues where you think it was about you, so maybe. You've done some of this stuff that this character is about, but I've had that happen where it's just completely fabricated or based off somebody else completely, and then somebody else thinks, whoa, that's kind of like me. Did you base that off me? I said, no.
I had the opposite happen. I wrote about somebody and they didn't realize it was them. Which was, I guess, was for the best in the end, but. Because it wasn't
kind of counteractive to what you're going for. Did you?
Well, they show. I did this. I did a one-act play that I wrote and we performed on stage. And the person that I wrote it about, I wasn't expecting to see, showed up.
Oh.
And then the whole thing. I'm sitting there in the back going, "Oh, I don't want to talk. Don't want to talk," and completely oblivious. Didn't know. Well, that person was terrible. She says, "I hated that character. She was terrible." I'm like. Right. Yes, she was. Yes, she was. Definitely terrible.
That's funny. So let's talk about Terror Tales. You've referenced it. What is it? What can you tell us about the storyline? How'd you get the idea, and when and also when can we see it?
Absolutely, yeah. So to try to be as short as possible with it, I'd say the idea for it would have started back in 2012. I was doing a short film, a vampire film, called Reign of the Vampire, and the goal with that film was for it to be part of a horror anthology film, and keep making shorts and put them together. Well, we shot that, and then I met, like I said, my partner in crime, Kevin Ward. He ended up playing the villain when we did a recast, and I found out he did special effects and such. And so when we wrapped Reign of the Vampire, him and I got to talking. Well, what could we do next? And he had this crazy little hillbilly redneck character that he plays himself as at the haunted house that he worked at. And he maybe like a week later came to me with a 60-page script, and we had that to go off of to do our first feature film. And it was Hans Crippleton Talk to the Hans is the name of the film, and it's basically redneck hillbillies meet zombies, and very politically incorrect, very funny movie. The main character has a little deformed hand, and it's totally outrageous. So it was a lot of fun. I loved the character that Kevin played. It was really intriguing to me, and it was something I wanted to dive into to direct and shoot it and be part of it and edit it and whatnot. And so, kind of jumping ahead, we did that. We completed the film, and I started getting really business minded, and and marketing for the film and getting it distribution. And that put the Reign of the Vampire thing kind of on hold in that short. But after we finished Hans Crippleton, then it's like, okay, what's the next feature film going to be? And then so that's when I'm like, I would love to go back to that anthology idea, start fresh, all new stories, make them better. Then Reign of the Vampire is good. I'm really proud of it. But I wanted to start fresh with my new skill sets. And that's kind of how that happened. And what's funny is we started writing an anthology, me and Kevin together, that was going to be interconnecting stories where everything goes, connects together, and the characters weave into one story and out of another. And so we started writing the segments for it, and that got put on hold. And then I jumped into writing the segments for Terror Tales. And so this past October, we shot the first segment by proxy with Lynn Lowry from like David Cronenberg's Shivers and Cat People. And she's been in a lot of really great cult horror films. And that was amazing. So we shot that, and we just pretty much wrapped on our second segment, Radical Video, which takes place in the 80s and kind of a throwback to the slasher genre. We're gearing up for the wraparound story at the end of this month, September. And going to shoot the final segment in November. So to kind of wrap that up, how the story is going to work is the wraparound story. There's a psychotic driver who abducts a husband and his family, and he takes him on this road trip across the desert, and he's gonna, he has plans for him at the end of the trip. And so when the husband wakes up, he finds that, he's tied up, head hurting, and the driver reveals to him that he's got his family locked up in an attached cargo trailer that's rigged up to set off a gas and a toxin that's going to kill his family if he doesn't do everything he tells them. So throughout the film, we'll go back and forth between the wraparound story, the actual story, wraparound story. And so the driver is the one, he's kind of the crypt keeper, if you will. He's going to be the one divulging these tales to the husband. Michael's the husband's name. And so he has no choice but to sit there and listen to these stories and other things that the driver makes him do, because he's got his family held captive. So that's how they're gonna kind of segue into each story. Each story is gonna be completely different, very creep show style, and like Tales from the Dark Side. And those are some of my favorite horror anthologies, and I want it to kind of be a nod and an homage to those.
I like that. I can see where a lot of places that could go. So when do you think we'll be able to see those?
Yeah, so 2017, sometime in 2017 should be pretty solid. you know, we have some things we're looking into that for distribution and as far as, you know, the road we want to take with that, with, you know, festivals and screenings and seeing how that goes when the film is finished, how we can get it out there. Like I said, we have our distributor with Hans Crippleton, and that's certainly an option. Yeah, so that's going to be exciting. So once that starts playing out throughout 2017, I would like to think we'd get a release sometime in that year.
All right, and you know, when it comes out, you definitely got to have you back on to talk about the finished product. Now, what was there anything during the production so far that kept you up at night, knowing that you were going to have to accomplish? Was there any moments that you can share with us where you were like, "Oh boy"?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So when we were shooting the Radical Video segment, it was probably the most ambitious thing I've ever done. We basically recreated an 80s video store from scratch. We had the space, and we we built like shelving units and all this stuff to faithfully recreate an 80s video store. So that was one of the things where the night before we're going to shoot our first scene, you know, we have some extra hands on deck helping us, which I'm really grateful for. But we got to a point where Kevin's like, you know, the other room of the video store is not going to be 100% finished today, right now anyway. So he's like, let's just take what we have here in this room, focus on it, because it was almost done. And, you know, let's focus on this room and film in this room. And so that was a really good mindset to be in, because if we would have tried to get that other film ready, or that other room ready too, and get shots in there, it would have put things behind schedule. It would have been bad. And we were able to get those shots that I wanted originally anyway, you know, over the course of weeks when we had more time to continue the set building in the other room. So that was a very oh boy moment, because, you know, and I think I came in on like 2 or 3 hours of sleep, if that. And, you know, was back you know, to film it and get the scenes. So yeah, that was a very tense moment. And yeah, and there was other moments, another moment too with the video store where I'm on the phone with Jonathan Tiersten, and, you know, Kevin and Amanda were helping out, and I hear a crash in the other room. And we're building up the shelving units, and they had just collapsed. So it's like one of those things where you're set building and you're working against the clock, and you get these setbacks and you got to rebuild them up. And it's like, oh god. But luckily, what happened, what was pretty cool with that, is as a video store was closing here, a local video store that had been around, it's called Video One, for years. As they were going out of business, I'm set building Radical Video, so I was able to go in there and, you know, buy a bunch of like shelving units, and they had a bunch of old school posters and off the wall 80s posters and stuff, and all these cool set decorative pieces that we were able to put into Radical Video. So it's kind of like, as that store was closing, we're building a video store up.
That's cool. Like, it's so funny. Young people, they're like, "What is a video store?"
I know, and it's really sad. And that's one of the things, you know, I was saying, like with kind of grounding in reality and things like that. You know, there's going to be a part in the Radical Video segment where it's very relevant to today's times, because we're going to see Radical Video in the present day going out of business, and the video store owner and stuff, and see it in the modern day. It's kind of going to end on that note, you know, where people can really identify with that, that their favorite video stores are going out of business.
I can recall that used to be like a big treat as a kid to be able to rent a movie.
Oh, there's nothing like it, man. Looking at the boxes, you know, buying the snacks, going in as a family, going in, you know, with a date, and looking at all the movies. And it's like so many filmmakers grew up going into video stores and looking at the box art, especially horror, because they had some of the coolest box art. And the film could be really shitty, but you would rent it just because the box art was so cool and engaging. I always remember Ice Cream Man with Clint Howard, Ron Howard's brother. That cover art always stood out to me as a kid, and I gotta rent this movie. So things like that. The memories And I always remember the smell of like popcorn and the popcorn machines and getting the popcorn. So that's one of the things I wanted in the Radical Video Store was the popcorn machine, because it resonated with me so personally, and that smell, and it, so extras would come in and they would smell like the popcorn and stuff, that we would pop before filming, and really recreate that.
Too bad they don't have smell-o-vision, right?
I know. I think that'd be cool. Like some popcorn smell. I think some theaters are doing that. What they call it, like 4D or something. The experience where they have like this spray water and mist and stuff in the theater. Spray some popcorn spray. They have to.
What was that Kentucky Fried movie where what was it, like television or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then it's like, our next feature is Deep Throat, and he was like, no.
So you mentioned awesome. It's like a 4G. It's like a 4D. That's like over across the river. They've got a 5D theater, and I'm like, well, what in the world is I understand what 3D is. What's 5D?
I know, right?
Are they like throwing? I mean, are they like throwing stuff at you or what?
I know, right?
It's pretty close. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, it'd be cool. I haven't sat in one of those kind of films yet, but it seems like a really cool premise to do that.
Now, so before you go, what can we be on the lookout? We know we have Terror Tales, and are there anything else we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, absolutely. So we pretty much simultaneously with Terror Tales, we've been doing a web series called What Is Hell, and Kevin is co-creator on it, and he's doing a lot of writing on the scripts for the episodes. We have over 10 written right now, so we got part of season 2 stuff written and all of season 1. So now we're just filming it throughout this year and putting the episodes together as we can. So in a nutshell, it's Satan is bored of hell, so he gets summoned to Earth, and he's got to adapt to everyday life. And it's not like the Lucifer show on Fox or anything like that, and weren't inspired by that, but it's a full-on Satan makeup, and it's really cool and really gnarly. And what's funny with this Satan is you see him and you're like, whoa, this is a pretty evil-looking Satan. But when he starts talking, he's like very and he's like this flamboyant, very festive kind of. And we've in his character traits, he's bisexual and he swings both ways, and he's got to adapt to life on Earth. He's got to get a job, and it's very, again, it's going to be very politically incorrect.
I love
Hans Crippleton film. We even took Satan out to the Gay Pride Parade here in Colorado. We were nervous. We weren't sure how they were going to take it. We weren't like doing it to make a statement. It was really funny. We put a rainbow boa on Satan, and we got some footage of him, and I tell you, man, we barely got the footage we needed because the gay community just really embraced it and had fun with it and wanted it was like a celebrity in Westwood.
What if Satan is on our side?
Now he's going to show up next year.
Man, yeah. Westward, the local publication here, they had him featured in the article, the picture of Satan for the Gay Pride Parade. And that was really cool to see, because we didn't want anybody to take it negatively. It was all in fun.
Right. No, you couldn't never do that. So
yeah.
That's funny though. That's hilarious. All right. So how can people follow you in social media, and you have a website or
Absolutely. Yeah. Heart and Fire Productions, www.heartandfireproductions.com. That's like the hub for all the projects we're working on. Social media, just under Jimmy Lee Combs. Just type that in. That's where I post a lot of my film stuff. And same with Heart and Fire Productions. You can type that into Facebook. Twitter is, let me see, I'll type it for you here.
Your name sounds like a killer from like a movie. Like the killer Jimmy Lee Combs.
Oh, yeah, right?
He escaped from the asylum,
Oh, funny. It's got, yeah, like it does. It has like the,
or an assassin or something.
Like in Chucky. I know. I guess I never really thought of it like that, but yeah, I guess it's kind of fitting. And my birth name is
your Puff Daddy's brother. Puff Daddy's brother.
And what's even crazy with that is even I have the same birthday, November 4th, wow. and like the same last name, which is crazy. But my birth name is James Clyde Combs, and I and kind of a stage name that I use is Jimmy Lee Combs. Yeah, and my uncle's middle name is Lee, and I always liked Lee, and so I kind of adapted that and go by Jimmy Lee a lot.
Oh, okay. I like it though. It's like, yeah, it's perfect.
And hopefully one day it'll be from like horror maestro Jimmy Lee Combs comes, or like Eli Roth presents, Jimmy Lee Combs presents. Who knows? Maybe one day.
Hey, you speaking into existence. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we got to have you back when Terror Tales is out, and also we want to see Bored as Hell. Get Keaton doing his thing.
And on that note, www.terrortalesmovie.com, Terror Tales Movie on Facebook, and Bored as Hell. Just type in Bored as Hell on Facebook, and it'll take you to the Facebook page on that.